Hello, friends. It's Monday. Hope everybody's got their week off to a good start. Wanted to hop on here and talk to you a little bit about technology and using digital with kids. Angel, thank you so much for inviting your followers. You're a dear. Let me flip the camera around and I will. Hey, guys. Hello, friends. Let me flip the camera around. Hello, everyone. It is a rainy Monday here. And I told the kids that as soon as I finish my scope, we are just going to snuggle up in the library and draw or color or knit or whatever it is they like to do. And we're going to read aloud because that is what you need to do on a rainy homeschool Monday, right? Hello, everybody. So I'm hopping on here because I wanted to talk to you about something that I've just written a post about this. And so it's been on my mind a lot. And I've had a lot of interaction from friends and things about this, so it's been good. It's been, we love some rain in California. Hi, Deshelle. Welcome. So what I've been thinking about is, I don't know how many of you guys read the article. I forget exactly what the title was, but it was something about how, you know, uh, electronics, use of digital changes your brain in the same way that it does like being on heroin. It's like a digital drug. Anybody read that article recently? It was kind of all over social media for quite a while. Okay, everybody's read that article. Okay, well then good, because you're starting from the same place I am. So let me introduce myself, and then let's talk about it, okay? My name is Lena Sutherland. I'm a homeschool mom of 7. Right now, 5 of them are school age, and the other 2 are little people. And I blog over at Homeschooling Without Training Wheels, hswotrainingwheels.com. And then you can find me on Instagram and Facebook and other social media, same as my Periscope handle, HSWO Training Wheels. So, yes, I agree. I didn't agree with all of it, but food for thought. And, I think here's the thing. My thesis of this blog post is basically, does technology, do digital resources for homeschooling present a parenting challenge? Sure. But is it a unique parenting challenge? Is there something, is this generation facing something that's completely different from what any generation before has ever faced? I'd say no. And so here are 3, there are so many things that people throw out there, so many comments that I heard from folks when I was discussing these things, but I kind of tried to lump it together into the top 3 things that I heard people say, and those are these. 1, it can damage your eyes. 2, you don't learn as well when you're using digital. And 3, it does something to your brain. Using digital technology messes up your brain, or it's addictive, has a terrible effect on your youngest brother. Okay, so I'm not here to argue that there are no problems, and I'm not here to argue that it doesn't require parenting wisdom. What I'm here to say is that this is not like a different animal like nothing else we've ever seen before, okay? And especially the thing that I feel like we don't want to say is that there's something going on with digital that's just, it's secret and nobody can ever realize that anything is going wrong until it's too late, and then, you're ruined. So that's what I want to talk with you about today. So the first concern that I've heard people mention is that it messes up your eyes. There's something about digital and it's going to damage your eyes. Okay, so guys, what is the greatest danger to your eyes? What is it that could, most of all the things that you might encounter, what's most dangerous to your eyes? Any guesses? I'll give you a hint. It isn't a computer screen. Any thoughts? Okay, well, how about the sun, right? That's why sunlight. We need to wear sunglasses when we go outside. Okay, so I'm not trying to, change your fear from like, don't fear the computer, instead fear the sun. I'm just pointing out that this is something, it's kind of common sense, right? You go out in the sun and you're doing like this because your eyes can tell it's, it's bright, or you put on sunglasses. And sometimes young children need a little help with this. Don't look at the sun. Remember to wear your sunscreen, right? They don't naturally think about these things. So we're guiding them in that. Well, it's the same with any kind of computer use. And actually, when I read a little bit about it, I found out that the danger from use of the computer is not really like something that's happening in your eye itself. It's eye strain from the muscles around the eyes, so the constant moving back and forth of your eyes as you're scanning a computer screen, you're going to develop eye strain. Well, guess what? That can happen from reading a paper book too. So, yes, I understand, there are differences in reading on the computer and reading a paper book. And if your concern is that you have preferences about it, like, well, I like to highlight or write in the margins, or I like to, be able to have it with me anywhere. So that's why I prefer digital. All of those conversations are perfectly legitimate conversations to have. So I'm not really trying to say which one wins over the other one. I'm just maybe trying to help us be a little more common sense and less fear-based in our interactions with digital. Okay, so those are some thoughts about how it affects your eyes. And I would say, that especially as adults, we know how to say, boy, my eyes are getting tired and I need to take a break. And we need to help our kids understand how to do that too. The same way we would help them understand how to stay hydrated and what to look for in, symptoms of the beginnings of dehydration. So the second concern that I've heard people say is that you just don't learn as well. And of course, you could address this in a million different ways. All different, because digital is not like one thing. Digital could be playing video games, it could be reading an ebook, it could be working on a spreadsheet. So, obviously there are a million different facets to what it means to, use digital or use technology in your homeschool. But in general, you hear things like, well, when students are using laptops in class, they don't learn as well because they're distracted. And yes, I don't argue against that. But again, this is not something we've never ever faced before this generation, right? When I was in school, the teacher was constantly having to, move a kid away from the window or move them to a quieter part of the classroom or something like that because they were likely to be distracted if they were around other people. Or, you might have one student who can sit at your dining room table to do his schoolwork and another student has to go up to his room to do the schoolwork. Right. And by the way, Beth Napoli over at Techie Homeschool Mom has a great article about questions to ask yourself about technology. So it's not just, are they looking at a screen or are they not? Or how many hours do they spend looking at a screen? But more considering fiction used to be considered not educational. Interesting. So can technology provide a distraction? Well, of course, yes. But, myself, when I get on the computer, say to do blogging work or something, I have to use a little self-control and not open Facebook, because if I open Facebook, 45 minutes will have gone by and I will have done no blogging. And so, the answer to the distractions that technology poses is to gradually train our children how to self-monitor and how to understand ways to avoid those distractions, rather than saying like, well, the problem is the computer, so let's never use the computer. Because what if my child grows up to have a job where, he's going to be, like, for example, my husband is on the computer 8 to 9 hours a day as a part of his job. So, I don't say like, well, I'm so concerned because my husband has 8 hours of screen time a day. He's working on spreadsheets and he needs to know a little bit about, how not to get consumed. For him, it's not Facebook, it's like news, or other things like that, reading reviews of things. Right, and we've got to teach them. We've got to teach them. Now, obviously, so Melissa mentioned earlier having a brother who has some trouble with that. So not all children are the same. Just like with anything else, right? Like one child can sit and work amidst a hubbub and not be distracted. Another child needs a little more space. So, what we really need here is not just, oh, I see the problem is digital, let's eliminate the digital. What we really need is use it to enhance what they're already doing. Sure, that's great. We need to know our children. We need to understand what's going on with them, what they're likely to struggle with, and then observe them as they're using it. So another thing, distractions is one part of how it affects learning. Another thing that was mentioned was that you don't memorize things as well when you're typing them as opposed to writing them by hand. And I don't think there's any need to disagree with this. Definitely the mode by which you are recording information affects how well you can memorize it. So, we've heard things like, if you want to memorize something, put it to music, or, write it with your finger in the sand or something like that. The more senses you engage, the more you're going to memorize it. But I want you to think back over the times that you've used technology or you've typed. Never learned balance between. Okay, so relationships is definitely another conversation to have, and we'll touch on that in just a minute, but not real thoroughly. So that could even be another topic of discussion. But the thing about typing is that normally when I type something, I'm not looking to memorize it. Normally when I type something, it's because I want it recorded to either share with somebody or to have, reference to it later or something like that. So if I was looking to memorize something, like for example, if I said, okay, I want to memorize this scripture verse, I probably wouldn't pull out my computer and type it over and over and over again. I might write it. I might, look at flashcards of it or something like that. So when I hear people say, oh, well, you don't memorize things as well or you don't retain them as well when you type, I don't feel a need to disagree with that, but I also don't feel like that proves that there's something wrong with digital. It just proves that we use common sense when we decide what mode to make use of when we're trying to accomplish a particular task. And if what you want to do is get the data recorded quickly, then a computer might be a great way to do that. And then the third one, and this is one that I think is really kind of big and scary, and we don't really know how to handle this yet, and this touches a little bit on what Melissa was saying, is that, we've heard these things like it changes your brain. Using digital or using electronics changes your brain, okay? And it kind of evokes these scary images of like, my little child is sitting here reading an ebook on the laptop and some, damage is taking place in her brain that I cannot even be aware of and I won't, have any signs of until it's too late and she's ruined. And it's, it's like this silent killer where there's no symptoms and this terrible thing will happen to her, so I'd better just not expose her to this at all. Okay, but if you read the research, what happens when they say it changes your brain? What they mean is that digital or using electronics, playing video games, watching television does the same thing to your brain that many other pleasure creating activities do. Okay, so a similar, other things that create similar brain scans are, for example, sex, runner's high, not even like a sexual relationship, but just the romance of first love. Okay, all of these things have the same effect on your brain as drugs like heroin or cocaine. Okay, and that sounds so scary because it's like, well, why would you give your kid, an ebook if it's going to make them like they're on cocaine? But here's the thing, if you think a little bit about how addictions work, the things that tend to lead to addiction are things that are in some way pleasant or pleasurable, at least in the experience of the person who is tempted to be addicted to them. And we all see this, in some degree or another in our own lives. When something is pleasant, when you enjoy something, it can tend to get a little out of priority. Like it can work its way up your priority list. Hey, Heather, welcome. Higher than it ought to be. And sometimes even overtakes, other things that ought not to overtake, like relationships and taking care of yourself and, fulfilling your other responsibilities and things like that. So when we say that technology changes your brain in the same way that drugs change your brain, what we mean is being only a consumer of electronics versus interactive. Okay, Melissa, that's a great point, and that's one of the things that Beth addresses is that, there's a difference between, like, say, watching Netflix for 8 hours and like, my husband being on the computer for 8 hours working on spreadsheets. So, very, very different. Screen time is not all one thing. You can't just say screen time and that's the whole picture of it. And I think also we have to be careful because video games, is also not all one category. So, my son playing a drag and drop phonics game is not exactly the same thing as just a shoot 'em up game. Now, is it still screen time? Are there still things I need to think about? Yes, but, screen time is not just one category, one size fits all category. So, the thing with how it changes your brain, we just need to think, just like anything else that is a pleasant experience in life, our children need guidance in knowing how to approach that, enjoy that, make use of that without abusing it or without their um, priorities getting out of order, right? You wouldn't take a bag of candy and put it on the table and tell your kids, just use your best judgment. You would think to yourself, they're going to really enjoy this. They're going to eat more than is good for them. But, when they're grown-ups, I don't get to tell them how much candy to eat. So now's my chance to give them some, talk with them about it. There's going to be a day where they're going to get, without your knowing it, they're going to eat way more candy than they should, then they're going to feel sick. Then you're going to have a conversation about that's why we eat candy in moderation, or you ate the candy, now you're not hungry for dinner, or, we do these things as we go along. But I think we need to be careful to not feel like the answer is forever to just restrict the technology, because again, eventually they're going to be grown-ups, and whether it's the food or the technology or the whatever it is, they're going to be on their own making their own decisions. So we have to kind of have this gradual transition of working from basically mommy's making the choices and setting the guidelines to basically you're making the choices and setting the guidelines. But we can't just do that in one giant leap. It has to be this gradual, like we say about many other things in parenting, kind of a gradual working yourself out of the job. Yeah, they have to learn how to deal with it. And sometimes the way they learn how to deal with it is by having a bad experience or, making wrong choices. And all the better if they have those experiences while they're with us so that we can, sometimes somewhat mitigate the consequences and then also talk them through those choices that they're making. So those are the thoughts that I had about technology and digital. And, again, I'm not trying to say that there's nothing to be done here. Melissa, you mentioned, and Beth has also mentioned a relative who struggles with, like digital or video game addiction or something like that. So I'm not suggesting that there's no concern here. I'm just suggesting that there's not some hidden, secret, silent danger that is happening to our children when they use technology. The struggles that we have with this are very much the same as struggles that we might have in other, things that are available to us that are pleasant but can be abused and overused. So I hope that's helpful to you all. I do have a post up on the blog about this right now, and I've linked to a lot of things in there. Yeah, and I do think that every generation is going to have things that they haven't thought about before. They have to, realize that this fits in the category of things like that. I think we do, ourselves a disservice if we behave as though, it's something that doesn't require any parental guidance. But we can kind of fall off the other side too. So the post on the blog has a bunch of links to articles and things like that. If you are interested in reading further, you can find that at Homeschooling Without Training Wheels, hswotrainingwheels.com. Thank you for joining me. I have a whole bunch of fun stuff that I'm hoping to get on and scope about this week, so I look forward to seeing some of you all later on, and I will see you at Homeschool Happy Hour. Bye-bye. You are welcome, Heather. And I'm still here.